So I just want to preface this by saying that I am not a dietitian, doctor, weight loss coach, professional in any way. I'm really just on here to share how I lost a significant amount of weight and what really worked for me, and create more of a positive narrative around the whole health and fitness industry in general, and just help people out with motivation or if they're really struggling and how to get started in weight loss. But I am not a professional in any way, so don't take everything that I say and think that I'm saying that you have to do this in order to lose weight. This is really just what worked for me, and I want to share that with everybody. So hi, my name is Katie. I am a college student. I'm a personal trainer, and I am currently training for a bikini competition. And during quarantine, basically, I lost 40 pounds. And I want to come on here and kind of share my whole story and experience and how I did that, and really just create more of a positive dialogue around weight loss, because there's a lot of stuff out there in the media today, and I think that there's really unhealthy ways to go about it. There's a lot of misconceptions about weight loss, and I just want to clear up how I did it, because I really think that I went about it in a great way. I made a lifestyle change. I enjoyed every step of the journey. It's not something that I felt like I was torturing myself. I really made sure to enjoy life as I was losing weight, essentially. And I think that that's the most important thing. And I want to be able to help people in any way that I can with that. So just to provide a little bit of backstory, when I was growing up, I was always an overweight kid. I always felt really self-conscious about my weight. I really struggled with my confidence because I was always the bigger kid. I was never the most athletic, and I really just lacked a lot of confidence growing up, especially in those middle school to early high school years. That was probably when I was my heaviest. I'm not going to throw any numbers out there because I don't want anybody to compare themselves to me, because we all have different bodies and things are different for all of us. But I was definitely on the borderline obese. I was overweight classifiably, and I was probably on that edge between obese. And I really just was not confident or happy with myself at all. And that's why I wanted to make that change. So my freshman year of high school, I kind of started getting more into health and fitness. I was moving my body around a little bit more, and I actually had become vegan that year. So I was vegetarian up until then, and then I decided to become vegan. And with my veganism, I started thinking about more what I was putting in my body. I started eating more whole foods, and I started learning about what macronutrients were, so your carbs, fats, and proteins. And that definitely helped me in starting to see a little bit of weight loss. So then going into my sophomore year of high school, I was on my high school field hockey team. And to be on that, you had to be pretty athletically conditioned, mostly in running. So I started running a lot more to be able to keep up with the field hockey conditioning. And once the season ended, I decided I wanted to stick with it because I actually really liked running. And so from there, that's when I started to get into long distance running. So there was something about it that I really just loved. I felt like it was a time where I could just get into my own headspace, kind of decompress, and I just loved running. And so from there, I started doing half marathons. So I did my first one my junior year of high school, and there was something about training for a big event and working really hard towards something and having a place to showcase how hard I had worked that I just absolutely loved. Like, the whole preparation for a half marathon was so exciting to me. And I think that in that way, I'm really competitive. Not so much so that I want to beat other people, but more so that I love just being able to go to an event and show off what I've been working towards. So I did a few more half marathons after that, up until my senior year of high school. And that's definitely when I was my healthiest. So I was eating a really clean plant-based diet. I was running all the time. I was weightlifting. And I was at my lowest weight at that point, and I felt really great about myself. I wasn't 100% confident all the time, but my confidence had gone up so much. I felt like I was much happier, and like things were just kind of falling into place for me at that point. But then towards the end of my senior year of high school, there were a lot of things going on in my life, and fitness kind of took a backseat a little bit. I still was working out, but it wasn't the biggest priority of my life, because there were just a lot of things going on around me, especially with going off to college and things like that. I also was not as into my nutrition as I once was. I stopped being vegan, which is fine, but I kind of fell into this culture of big cheat days because there were a lot of fitness people on the internet that were doing them, and I was having a lot of cheat days and I was eating a lot of food and just not creating the healthiest habits around food. So then going into my first year of college, I definitely had some lifestyle changes. The way that I was living my life was not as focused around health and fitness as it once was. I was creating some kind of unhealthy habits. My priorities in life just weren't in the place where they once were. And I felt like I was falling into having some bad and unhealthy habits. And with that, I started to see some weight gain. And I didn't have a scale or anything like that, so I wasn't measuring my weight, but I could definitely tell that my body was going through some changes. But I was also kind of in denial because I didn't have that number to look at. It wasn't until I went on vacation on winter break with my family, and there was a scale at the place that we were staying, and I decided to step on it, and what I saw really shocked me. I had gained about 25 pounds since leaving for college, and that was something that was a wake-up call for me. It really wrecked me to see that, just because I had kind of noticed that it was happening and I wasn't the happiest with myself, but just to really see it and see that number there, it wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to make a change, and I felt really defeated about it at first. I wanted to just sit and cry about it, but I told myself, the only way you're going to change this is if you get up and you make a change to your lifestyle. And that's what I did. So when I went back to school, the first thing that I started to do was I increased my cardio. So going into college, I kind of stopped doing cardio. I wasn't enjoying it as much as I used to, like with the long distance running. And by the time I had hit January, I was not doing cardio at all. And so I knew that in order to lose weight, I would have to create that calorie deficit. So I started to do more cardio. I would run a couple times a week in addition to my weightlifting. And I also was paying more attention to what I was eating. So I was tracking my food diligently, and I was making sure that I was creating a calorie deficit, which is one of the most important things for weight loss. So I kind of want to get into the logistics of this because a lot of people talk about this, and I think that there's a really unhealthy way of going about it. And I think that there's a lot of things that you need to avoid when going into a calorie deficit. So starting off, to figure out how many calories you need at your resting, you can go online and figure out your resting metabolic rate just by entering your simple height, weight, gender, age, all that. And it'll come up with a pretty standard number. Now, that's not 100% accurate. It's just something to go by. And then also your activity level really plays into that. You know, how much you move around during the day. If you have a job where you're on your feet all the time, or whether you're sitting in a chair, that might change how many calories you burn during the day. But that's a good place to start. And if you are trying to see weight loss, typically what you hear is to take 500 calories off of your maintenance calories. So not your resting metabolic rate, but your maintenance calories overall. And so I think that a big mistake that a lot of people make with this is they go too low. They think, well, I want to see more of a weight loss more quickly, so I'm going to go really low with my calories. But one of the issues that creates is it creates a lifestyle that's not sustainable for people. Most people, even if they can maintain that low calorie diet for some amount of time, it's not going to be something that's sustainable as a lifestyle. And eventually they're going to see that weight gain come back. Also, they think that they need to eat a certain kind of foods that maybe they don't like. And I think that a lot of people really just struggle with this because they're suffering and they're torturing themselves. And I think that the best way to go about creating a calorie deficit is to keep it at a healthy amount. So don't go super low, you know, try and keep it around that 300 to 500 range. And with that, because you don't know exactly what your resting metabolic rate is, it's important to be tracking your weight. So if you're eating a certain amount of calories and you're tracking your weight and you see that it's going down, you know that the calorie deficit that you've created is working. Another thing that plays into this is the kind of foods that you're eating. So just because you're eating low calorie doesn't mean it needs to be unenjoyable, bland, boring foods. there's a lot of really great recipes out there that you can find that are low calorie and healthy. You know, just doing some research or even just getting creative in the kitchen yourself can really help with that. Somebody who really helped me with finding amazing, sustainable and satisfying low-calorie meals is the king himself, Greg Doucette. He has a lot of his recipes on YouTube, and he has an entire cookbook of them, and everything that I've tried of his is amazing. And he kind of inspired me to get into the kitchen and try my own, you know, recipes that are kind of adapted to be more low calorie, and I genuinely was loving everything that I was eating at this point. So first thing is to have a calorie deficit. Second thing I mentioned is I started to do more cardio. So I was running in addition to my weight training, but at the same time, I was also just moving around a lot more in my daily life. So I made it a priority of mine to get a lot of steps in. I started by just getting 10,000 steps a day, and I was tracking them on a Fitbit. And then after that, I really just started to enjoy walking. I wasn't doing it just because it was an exercise thing, but it was more of like a time for me to clear my mind. I would do it first thing in the morning. I would listen to my music or a podcast or just something that I really enjoyed. And it was relaxation time to me. It was really just like me time. And nowadays I get 20,000 to 25,000 steps a day. It's something that I really prioritize. But just by moving that much more, it really helps to create a calorie deficit and also keep your heart healthy. That's one thing too, that even if you're not trying to lose weight, it's still important to keep up that cardio work because your heart is essentially one of your most important muscles, if not your most important muscle. It's keeping you alive and you want to keep it healthy. So even just by walking a little bit, it can create better weight status, and it can also just promote that heart health, which is really great. So making these healthy changes to my lifestyle definitely kickstarted the weight loss for me, but I still had those unhealthy lifestyle habits that were kind of negatively affecting me. So whether that be going out on the weekends and eating whatever I wanted or having big cheat days or things like that. And it wasn't until I was sent home from school and put into quarantine here that I really didn't have anything to put my energy towards except for my health and fitness. And I had seen about a 10-pound weight loss in March from January. And that was like that initial place that I was in, but it wasn't exactly where I wanted to be at. I still was not at that weight that I felt comfortable at. I still wasn't feeling as confident in myself. So when I went into quarantine, I didn't have a lot of equipment to work with, obviously because gyms were closed. I am fortunate enough to have some free weights and a couple of machines to work with, but I really prioritized walking a lot. I would go for walks all the time. I was getting my cardio in, and I was doing whatever weight training that I could.
I'm thinking back on all those times when I felt closed off from all that I could become, eager but too scared to climb. Wanted to please my friends, but it felt like the end of myself. I was shut down.
I also found it really helpful to be looking at bikini competitors on YouTube. I don't know why. That was exactly what I turned to because I had no intentions of ever doing a bodybuilding competition, bikini competition, anything like that. But there was something about these girls who were putting all of their effort towards something, working really, really hard towards something, and then having an end goal and looking amazing and feeling amazing about themselves and just having something incredible to showcase to people. It got me really excited and motivated. I would watch these girls on YouTube doing this and, you know, just documenting their whole journey. And it made me really excited. And there was a little piece of me that thought, oh, it would be so cool to do that. But then I was like, no, there's no way I could ever. But I was using their videos as motivation, and it really made me just want to push myself and work harder towards things. And yeah, that's something that really helped me throughout my weight loss journey, just looking towards other people for motivation. So socially, I know that it can be a little bit difficult when you are trying to eat a certain way and live a certain lifestyle because you feel like you're missing out on things when people are going out to certain restaurants or eating certain foods, and you want to partake in it because you want to be part of that experience, but you're also watching your weight. And that's something for me that I've always struggled with. I've always associated my experiences and just gatherings and things like that with food. And I think that that was an important distinction that I needed to make in order to make a change for my weight loss journey. And so what I kind of told myself with all of this is that there needs to be a distinction made between being with people and having those experiences and eating a certain food. So for instance, just because you're at a certain restaurant or you're at a certain party or a gathering or whatever, doesn't mean that you need to eat a certain food in order to get the most out of that experience, even if it feels that way. So for example, just because it's so-and-so's birthday doesn't mean you have to have birthday cake in order to enjoy yourself at the party. Now, this is not to say that you can't treat yourself to something every now and then. If it's your birthday and you want to have a piece of cake, go for it, have a piece of cake. But it doesn't mean that you always need to be eating something in order to fulfill that experience. This is something that came to play a lot too when I would go to certain restaurants. So when we would go, I would pretty much always do the same thing. I would figure out where we were going. I would look at the menu beforehand. And most places you can find some kind of like simple salad or something like that. And before we would leave, I would usually eat my own protein. So like some chicken or something like that, maybe a carb, like a sweet potato. And then when we would get to the restaurant, I would just order a very simple salad, usually take off anything that was like, you know, dried fruit or something that's gonna add a lot of calories. Like a lot of times restaurants will add like fried strips of like some kind of breading or something like that. Usually get all that stuff off and dressing on the side. So that would be like my fat component to the meal. And then mainly having that salad be just veggies. So not like cheese or anything like that. And you know, it's a little bit boring per se to have just a salad. But for me, it didn't really make a difference that I wasn't eating the same thing that my family was eating. As long as I was there and I was enjoying myself and being present with my family and having conversation with them, it didn't really matter that I wasn't eating those same foods. So in terms of my actual weight loss, I had mentioned that in March I had lost about 10 pounds initially. But then after quarantine went into effect, from there I was losing pretty steadily, and I was eating those really high volume, low calorie, dense foods that I really enjoyed, lots of vegetables. I was loving my diet. I was eating French toast every morning from Greg Doucette, who I mentioned, and I was just finding great recipes. Definitely will share some of them if anybody is interested in hearing about them, because I think that I've made some really amazing stuff. And I eventually decided to order a scale because I could see changes happening in my body, but the best way to track your progress is to actually see what the actual number is. And so I ordered a scale around June and I stepped on and I was about 25-ish, 20 to 25 pounds down from where I was. And that was just so exciting for me. Like I felt amazing about it. And at that point I was thinking to myself, maybe it might be reasonable to start thinking about doing a bikini competition. I was still really invested in watching those videos of those girls who were doing it, and it was something that just excited me. Again, it was that feeling of working really hard towards something and having something to show for it. So at a certain point, my weight did hit a plateau. Because I had been eating a certain calorie deficit, and I had lost a pretty good amount of weight, my body was adapting to that and it was no longer losing weight. So I kind of got into my head at that point that I wanted to do the bikini competition. I wanted to get a little bit lower in my weight because I wanted to be about 10 pounds up from where I would step on stage. That's typically what you hear for where you want to be in your off season of competing. And I still wasn't quite there yet. So just to get that little bit extra off, I did lower my calories a little bit because my metabolic rate did change a little bit. When you lower your calories, your metabolic rate is going to adapt so that you can function more efficiently. But that means that if you're trying to lose more weight, you will have to lower your calories a little bit more. So I did lower them a little bit more, nothing super drastic, nothing where I was feeling, you know, like I didn't have enough energy to function or anything like that. I still felt fine on the calories that I was eating. They were just a little bit lower. And then once I finally reached that point that I wanted to be at, from there, I decided to actually increase my calories. So I wanted to get myself to a maintenance calories that was pretty healthy and a pretty good amount, so that when I went to go start training for my bikini competition, I would have a place to go down from. Because if you start really low, the only place to go from there is down. So I wanted to create a good enough metabolism for myself. And the way that I did that is I would slowly increase my calories, but I was tracking my weight every day. So just to make sure that I wasn't gaining a whole bunch of weight and eating too much or even eating too little. And so I basically stayed at the same place for that whole time that I was doing that. I was increasing my calories slowly, but my weight was staying the same, and I got myself to a healthy place where I felt like I was eating a good amount and it was a pretty good maintenance calories. So at this point, I lost about 35 pounds, and this is when I went back to school for my first semester of my second year of college. And so I still was able to go out with friends and enjoy myself. I just was being more diligent about tracking what I was eating. So that's another thing that is really important is when you're tracking, you want to make sure that you're being accurate with it. So you don't need to be super precise about absolutely everything, especially if you're not training for a competition or anything like that. But you do want to make sure that you're not underestimating how much you're eating. And one thing that really helped me with that is ordering a kitchen scale. Now, I know that for some people, this is something that they are a little bit hesitant about because they may think that they're going to become obsessed with it. And I totally understand that because that is something that I used to really struggle with. But I did get myself to a good place where I felt like I was comfortable having a kitchen scale and weighing my food out. And what that really did for me is I basically knew how much I should be eating of most things, but one thing that I didn't know is the measurement of certain proteins. So like in terms of ounces, I just kind of assumed that basically if I was eating a piece of chicken, it was always 3 ounces, which is just not true. And I was severely under tracking my calories, which is one of the things that really contributed to me having excess calories and therefore gaining weight. So when I started actually weighing my food out and seeing how much I should be eating, I started to see those changes. Now, I'm not saying that every single person needs to weigh every single thing out that they eat, but it may be something that's helpful, especially with certain foods when you feel like you're more estimating what you're eating rather than getting it right on target. That may help with you with just keeping your calories in check. So in November, I started my training for my first ever bikini bodybuilding competition. I'm really excited about it. From my starting point, I'm down about 5 pounds, and I've just been loving it. It's definitely very different. It's a very extreme side of fitness, and it's not for everybody, but it's something that I'm really passionate about, and I just feel like from where I've started this year, it's the next place to go. I just want to keep getting better and better and better. I feel like I'm probably forgetting a lot of things and how my weight loss happened and what I went through. But hopefully I got a good gist of everything. Hopefully it was motivating to some people. I definitely don't see myself stopping with things here. Like I said, I just want to keep improving, keep getting better. And I want to share more of my tips and tricks, and recipes and things like that. So if you enjoyed or have any questions, please let me know. And thank you so much for watching.